Hey Pokemon fans, Real Mama Eagle here, also known as Key, and today I'm here to talk to you about why we as a Pokemon fan base have overrated Gen 2. Before I get into this, I do want to preface this by saying I do adore Gen 2. It's still a fun gen to play, and I also am fully aware that it was intended to be the last generation, but we do have to analyze it as part of the Pokemon series. And there are a lot of things that even the most diehard fan would not acknowledge as being very problematic or very tough in gameplay. Before we get into this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I know you're likely going to leave an angry comment down below, but it's all good. Let's get started. Let's talk about the main thing that people overrate when they talk about Gen 2, the Pokedex, and the Pokemon available and the evolutions available. These are all problem areas as you play through Gen 2. Now, I'm a fire type trainer and I do like to start with Cyndaquil a lot, but if I don't start with Cyndaquil, the amount of fire type Pokemon available to me is very limiting. Now, if it's Pokemon Silver, I can get a Vulpix, and if it's Pokemon Gold, I can get a Growlithe, but those are Gen 1 Pokemon and I've used them already, so it's kind of frustrating for those to be the main ones available. You do get Slugma and Magcargo that aren't available till late in the game, and Houndour and Houndoom are available in Kanto, so it's kind of really tough for fire Pokemon representation. I also kind of felt like there are Pokemon that were made available too late, like Houndour, Houndoom, like Sneasel, like Tyranitar. A lot of Pokemon that are locked in Johto late in the game, Kanto, or Mount Silver, so very, very frustrating if you want to take a really cool Pokemon all the way through. Now, don't get me wrong, the Gen 2 Pokedex does have some bangers. I did mention Tyranitar, I did mention Houndoom. The legendaries are great, Ho-Oh and Lugia. The legendary dogs are great. There are a lot of other great Pokemon in the decks, Ampharos, for example, but then there are some terrible ones like Delibird and Sunflora and Dunsparce and Snubbull and Gramble, and then all the baby Pokemon that were just a waste of space that we really didn't need, and just a lot of frustration and a lack of creativity with the Pokedex. That was my main issue with it. I also like the fact that if you need an evolution stone, they were pretty much non-existent or non-available. One thing I like about Gen 1 is the fact that you had the Celadon department store if you wanted to buy a stone to evolve your Pokemon. And Gen 2, you pretty much don't find stones in the wild like that. You're very lucky if you do. But you have to wait until Pokemon Crystal, where people actually have to call you if you get their phone number and then they give you an item. So you almost make stone evolutions pretty much near impossible in Gen 2, which is very, very frustrating. But I have serious issues with the Pokedex, and those are just some of them. One of the biggest things that Pokemon fans overrate about Generation 2 is the story. Now, don't get me wrong, Mahogany Town, Lake of Rage with Team Rocket are fire. I do like the part where Team Rocket takes over the radio tower, despite it being a little bit drawn out. And the Slowpoke Wells little story, but it's very short. Ecruteak City also has the part with the sages where you can catch Ho-Oh at the top of the tower, but if you're playing Silver and catching Lugia, you don't have that plot. You go to Whirl Islands instead, which isn't a story, just you navigating a very long and very annoying dungeon. And people talk about the story in Kanto, not really much of a story, other than Gary and Blaine telling you what happened to Cinnabar Island and Misty on her date. There's not really much that you're doing besides fighting gym leaders. All the story elements were pretty much taken out of Kanto in Gen 2. Gen 2 as a whole, I think people are so focused on the lore of the region of Johto because Johto has that historic, beautiful Japanese feel, and I get that. Ecruteak City definitely embodies that the most, but I think people are mistaking lore for actual story elements. But outside of, again, Mahogany Town, the radio tower, and Slowpoke Well, where is the story? You're pretty much just fighting gyms and going from one blank and boring route to the next. So that's my biggest issue with people claiming it's so rich in story elements when really it's not. My biggest issue with Gen 2 is the fact that it pretty much needs Kanto to be relevant. And I find over time that Gen 2 has actually become more overrated than Gen 1. Gen 1 was its own standalone thing that really wasn't copying anything else, just kind of the original and the pioneer and the blueprint. Gen 2 had some great things about it and some great original ideas and some pretty solid quality of life changes, but it does need Kanto to be relevant. Keep in mind, we got a lot of evolutions to Gen 1 Pokemon. We got a lot of pre-evolutions to Gen 1 Pokemon. And think about it. When everyone talks about how great Gen 2 is, what is the main thing everyone says? Wait for it, wait for it. I get to go back to Kanto. So that's the main selling point for Generation 2. Kanto. It's dependent on Kanto, and that's the problem. Gen 2 would probably be rated as one of the worst regions if you did not have the amazing post-game that it had, and that's the unfortunate part about it. And what's sad about it is that Kanto is not even the same when you go back, because like I said in a previous video, Celadon City is still nice, but they did take away the game corner. You know, there's no Safari Zone in Fuchsia. Cinnabar Island is completely burned down. Viridian Forest is just a path. I've said these things previously. All the story elements and all the things that made Kanto great are gone. So the fact that a watered down Kanto is the selling point for Generation 2 even sells further on Gen 2's dependency on Gen 1, and that's a serious problem. Now, this probably could have been tacked on with my dependency of Kanto portion, but I always hated how the Johto gym leaders never actually used Johto Pokemon, which again proves how overrated the Pokedex is, because there should have been more for these gym leaders to choose from. Faulkner has a Pidgey and a Pidgeotto when you could have easily given him a Noctowl or a Hoot Hoot. Bugsy has Kakuna, Scyther. You could have given them a Leedian or an Ariados. We'll give Whitney a pass because Whitney has a Miltank. That Miltank. Morty does not have a Misdreavus, just has a Gengar and a Ghastly and a Haunter. Makes no sense. Now, Jasmine does have a Steelix. Price does have a Piloswine, but Chuck has a Poliwrath and a Primeape. Should have given him a Hitmontop or something else. And, you know, we do have Claire that does have a Kingdra, so it does make sense. But I never understood why they didn't celebrate more Johto Pokemon by giving those to the Johto gym leaders. Again, part 2 of dependency on Kanto. One of the things that we've overrated about Johto in Gen 2 over the years is Johto itself. Don't get me wrong, Johto is gorgeous and historic, and it looks even better and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But there unfortunately not really much that stands out besides it. Outside of Ickertick City, Goldenrod, and Violet, not really super memorable. Some people may say Lake of Rage, but Mahogany Town is so boring. And the Lake of Rage is really just a lake. It's more so the plot of Lake of Rage that saves it. The location itself is pretty boring. But not a lot of memorable locations. If anything, I'd argue the locations are more annoying than memorable. Like even the Ruins of Alph, which had so much potential and they could have done more with, just became a nuisance. Whirl Islands, that should have been a fun exploration to find Lugia, was a real pain in the you-know-what. So there are a lot of areas of opportunity that could have been better, but focus more on the challenge. And I don't mind a challenge, but I did want to see the lore, not just in the cities, but the other locations as well. So they did miss the mark on that. I love Johto to pieces, but again, outside of 3 cities, not memorable at all. The most annoying thing in Generation 2 is absolutely the level curve and the experience in grinding. Now, don't get me wrong, I grew up on RPGs. I like grinding, I do like the challenge, but some of the level changes between different routes made absolutely no sense. After Ickertick City, it gets a bit weird. Now, after you beat Morty, the gym leader in that city, your Pokemon may likely be between 20 and 30. If you go out into any routes in the surrounding area, Pokemon are leveled like 14, 13, which makes it very tough to level up and very hard to get experience points. And all the Pokemon in the area pretty much offer no experience. What I did to level up in Gen 2 was very annoying. I waited until nighttime, went right to the path below Ecruteak City where I know Stantler would be, because Stantler always gave 300 experience points at a time. Mind you, if my Pokemon were leveled a bit higher, it would take forever to level up because 300 points experience after a certain level doesn't really add up to much. Even late in the game in Mahogany Town and Lake of Rage, the Pokemon are leveled so low, making it so hard for you to level up. The last route before you go through Ice Path before Blackthorn City, again, low level Pokemon, low level trainers at like level 20 when your Pokemon are at like level 40. It just made absolutely no sense how they did that. It's like Game Freak wasn't thinking when they placed these trainers and Pokemon down on these routes. They were like, you know what? It's the last route or two. Let's just fill it in. We're done. We're good. Bye-bye. That part about it was super, super annoying. It made it very hard to level up and grind. And why? I also wanted to address the Gen 2 remakes for a second. I do think they are phenomenal remakes. Not the best in the series to me. I think Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are still the best remakes. But Gen 2 did do a good job cleaning up some of the issues. I do love the graphics in the Gen 2 remakes. They had a cute little wrinkles in the story, and I love that your Pokemon could follow you. But they still did not fix all the issues that I talked about previously. The level curves in the Gen 2 remakes are still there. There's still an issue getting evolution stones. There's still an issue with Johto Pokemon not being featured in the gyms as much. There's still that lack of a true feel of a story overall, and you still lock some of the best Pokemon in Kanto, and Kanto is still pretty empty. So where the remakes were really great and really fun to play, there is a common misconception that they corrected all the issues Gen 2 had, and they didn't. I definitely encourage people to play those as opposed to the original because they are a much better experience. But I do wish that they had touched on a bit more and really cleaned up a lot of those problems. This video gives the potential for me to have the most active comment section I've had on any of my videos so far, but I'm ready for it. Talk to me in the comment section down below. Let me know what I may have missed. Is there an irritating thing about Gen 2 that I left out? Do you think that maybe I'm overreacting on a few things? It's possible that I might be, and I admit that, but these are definitely problematic issues that over time have not aged well to me. But again, want to state that I do love Gen 2. Don't want anyone to think this video was made out of hate or disdain for the Pokemon name or for the games itself. I still love them. I'm just very big on being critical about things that we grew up with. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, and ding that bell so you know when videos are live. I am also Real Mama Eagle on all social media platforms, and I do Twitch live streams at twitch.tv/RealMamaEagle. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you all next time.